Hey, I'm Travis Roberts, Vice President of Satanic Grotto. On today's episode, we have Michael Stewart, our president. Joined with us also will be Carrie, a longtime member and organizer, and she's going to be talking about her left-hand path and what eventually led her to joining the Grotto. You know, Carrie is phenomenal. She's a great member, a great person, and she is very passionate about building community, and it's members like her that make this organization so wonderful. There's so many good things I could say about her, but we'll let them get into that a little bit. If you like what you hear, go ahead and go out to all those social networks, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, like, subscribe, Patreon. You can go over there, donate, help us out. We started building a studio. We've got some good sound quality coming through here. We're working on our lighting, getting better at editing. If you stay tuned afterwards, got a little announcement. So before we get in all that, guess what? You got to cue the music.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Grotto Show. I'm pleased to be here with another Grotto member today, Miss Carrie. Say hello to everyone.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Wow, you've been with The Grotto for what, at least 2 years now? Maybe a little longer?
At least 2 years. Probably going on 3.
Excuse me, my voice was cracking.
But let me say not long enough.
I can't even... We've done so much together. You've done so much with the group. How about we start off with talking a little bit about maybe your personal history, if you're okay with that?
Yeah, sure. So I came from my mom, and that's what I tell the protesters. I came from my mom. So I grew up in primarily Baptist church. Been in church my whole life. Started with Baptist, then my mom married someone who was Lutheran, and then as I grew older, I kind of stuck with the Baptist thing mostly, but there was 1 year in my life where I went to a different church every single weekend, just because I like to be informed and educated. So
you were trying to see what everybody was doing.
Yes.
That's interesting. Are you Midwest native then?
Yes, born and raised in Kansas, in the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
So, pretty much a lot of people I know.
Right, absolutely. And so, how old do you think you were? What time did you start leaving the church? What was that period of life like?
I kind of, when my younger brother, who's 8 years younger than me, was born, he didn't like church, so my family kind of stopped. But I kept going because I had a lot of friends that were going to church, and I lived out in the country, so the only time I really got to see my friends is if I was in some part of like sports or social type thing. So I would go to like youth group stuff to see people I knew.
I think that's pretty common.
It wasn't so
here.
much about the church. Like I realized there are good philosophies, there are good morals in a lot of different religions. Mm-hmm. For me, it was more the social aspect of it that I really needed in my life. Mm-hmm. So in and out, off and on for a very long time. Even when I had, as an adult, kind of left the church, kind of came back to it for a little while when I was having a hard time because I needed the support from the community. And great church, great people. Even though I didn't really believe fully in God at the time, I needed the support of the church. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's kind of my history.
And that's pretty common out here in the Midwest too. I mean, I can relate to that even in my life, that there was a point in time where if I needed that social interaction, if I needed support, the only avenue available was going to church.
Well, and it's one of the only things my parents approved me to doing.
Right.
My mom, I guess, back in the day was kind of wild, and she didn't want me to go that route. And with a girl, you're like, we don't want you to get pregnant and do all these things. So that was their way of like kind of keeping me in check.
Mm-hmm. So when do you think you really broke away? How old do you think you were?
Well, I remember when I was 9. So my mom used to be really involved in the church, used to sing. She's beautiful, gorgeous. I remember when I was 9, the pastor coming to our house because I wanted to be baptized. Mm-hmm. And, I realize at that time there was a problem with the church. I wasn't old enough to realize exactly what it was, because here I was saying, yes, I believe in God. Yes, I want to be baptized. But he came to my house and basically told me I was old enough. I was like, I knew what I was saying, but I didn't really know who God was and what that meant. So he basically disvalued and discredited everything I believed at that time, because I desperately wanted to be baptized. And he's like, no, but yet the Bible will say, see God through the eyes of a child.
Mm-hmm.
But then the church told me it wasn't good enough.
They
And then I was seeing God in a
you.
purer light than they were, because I was the eyes of a child. And then they told me, no, you're not good enough basically to be baptized at this point in your life.
So that's what really started kind of setting off your question.
That triggered a lot of my things with the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, I'm not a dumb person. I started reading, and I went to, in later life.
Reading always does it. Reading will always ruin that shit.
So later in life, I went to a church that was in a warehouse. It was more modern, but they were very much about transparency and authenticity. And again, if I had to go to church, that was the best one I ever went to. And the pastor would stand up in front of the church and he would say, don't just listen to what I'm telling you, read it for yourself. Mm-hmm. And so even though I had read the Bible, once he started ministering and I started reading it for myself, then I saw the inconsistencies for myself. And again, I'm not saying anything against people that do believe. I think for some people that's great, and I believe in a religious freedom. It's just not specifically what I believe. But I think there are good morals, there are good philosophies in lots of different religions.
And it sounds like you've really put in the effort to explore all those avenues, and still just felt, even after all that exploring and after all that reading, that you were still missing something. Is that kind of what's led you?
Yeah, I just, some of the things, like if I went and there was no Bible present and I told someone like, well, I talked to somebody in the sky. I don't worry about anything. I'm fearless because of my friend in the sky. Like, people would think you were crazy. They would commit you to an insane asylum. And that's basically what they're telling us and want us to believe as adults.
Yeah.
And the reason I think they say children can see him better is because they've programmed these children to believe what adults tell them and not question it. So in college, when you go to college, I had this great Western civilization teacher. And he said, when you stopped questioning the world, when you stop making people uncomfortable, mm-hmm. he said, you stop learning. Because people don't like questions, and they don't like answering questions they don't know the answers to.
Right.
So I think college really opened up my eyes a lot. And I started seeing things on a more global mm-hmm. level.
So where did you go after that? I'm assuming there was a little bit of time between college and the Grotto there. Did you explore outside of Christianity there?
I read a lot. I raised children. And when my oldest son was younger, I had gone back to the church. And one day he had taken the Avon, like Skin So Soft. It was like a insect repellent and sunblock in the same bottle. And his brother was a newborn baby, and he sprayed it in his eyes. And as a mother, that's terrifying. I'm thinking my son could lose his vision. I was mad at my younger son. I'm holding this baby underwater in the sink while I'm calling poison control. And I told my son at that point, God is not happy with you. You're going to hell.
Oh, wow.
I said, is that what you want? And, I think at that point I realized when I got a call at work 5 hours later, my husband had actually called my job and said, will you please talk to our child? He's having a meltdown. He's crying hysterically because for some reason he thinks he's going to burn in hell. And at that point, I realized this is a fear tactic. It's mm-hmm. not fair to my children. It's not fair for me as a parent to utilize that and create that kind of trauma on my child. So to be a responsible parent, I really had to deprogram myself.
That's really amazing. I think that it's hard for a lot of parents to come through that if they ever do. And I would like to say right now, that's amazing that you can have that experience, recognize what happened, and then course correct and go, wait, something weird there. Because I've had similar things, maybe not directly with God and you're going to hell, but still that ingrained social norm of this is how this happens. And then I hurt my child's feelings, or I made them feel weird or insecure about something that they're a child. Things happen, right?
Right.
And that's really cool. I'm really impressed to hear that.
I didn't know until that point in my life. It took me having children to really figure out that was a fear tactic that traumatized children, and that I myself
generationally
had been traumatized by the same thing. And when I think about myself as a child, my mom would work at night, and I would be home alone with my stepdad. And I wasn't scared of him. He was a great guy, but at the same time, I wouldn't just go bother him as easily as I would my mom. And so they had this little picture of Jesus on our wall. And I was terrified of everything when I was little. And I think it's because of this fear that was just put on me. I was afraid of men. I was afraid of strangers. I was afraid of the dark. And as I kind of got out of these traumas, I began to realize that I don't have to be afraid because this is a fear tactic. I don't have to live this way.
You were told to be that way.
I was told to be that way in order to be controlled. And, I didn't have to live, and I didn't want my children to live.
And that's exactly, and then we push that on our own
crying every
children.
night, huddling under the covers, afraid to go to their parent when they're afraid. And afraid to bother someone and, be consoled. And
absolutely.
That was a big life-changing event for me, just having kids.
That's pretty deep. Like I said, that's amazing. And a lot of people don't ever make that connection. So that's so what led you up to the Grotto then? What brought you in with this group of misfits?
Well, let me tell you, there's this person I know named Mark, my husband. He was not my husband at the time. He had come into the clinic where I worked and I drew his blood. He was terrified of drawing blood, and we had a mutual friend, so I kind of harassed him a little bit because I knew we had a mutual friend. And then I might have followed him on Facebook and stalked him a little bit because he was a tall German guy with an accent, really
as one
cute,
does. One does.
There's a tall tree I wouldn't mind climbing. Okay, so made friends with him, especially because we had a mutual friend together, and we started kind of messaging back and forth. He wasn't really interested in anything, but I still thought he was hot. But I'm like, he's really smart. He reads a lot. And we were kind of talking about the occult and things like that. And he's like, hey, have you read the Satanic Bible? And I was like, no. And he's like, do you want to borrow it? I have it on PDF. And how Mark is with his books.
I was going to say, one of the first times I ever met Mark, that was too, he's like, listen, I've got a bunch of books on PDF. Yeah. What do you need?
Yeah, he's like PDF magician. Okay. So I was like, sure, send it to me. And then kind of read it. And then we talked about it. And he's like, you actually read that? And I was like, yeah, I actually read it. And then, I made him swear to me that he'd meet me in a cemetery. We'd do some blood sacrifice and I don't know what else. But, things transpired from there. But one day he told me, we hung out a lot. He was more of a best friend than anything. And people wanted us to be something, but we have a huge age difference. We're like, nah, it wouldn't work out. Huge. He was dating other girls. I was hanging out with other people, mostly his friends. Anyway, so he tells me, on Saturday I'm going to Fox and Hound to meet up with these Satanists. So I was like, what?
Old Fox and Hound.
I'm like, do you know them? He's like, well, I messaged the guy on the internet. I'm like, that sounds safe, right? I'm like, no, I'm going to go with you. So Mark and I went.
I was the guy who was messaging on the internet.
You are.
Yeah,
you are,
I figured that was me.
So I went with Mark to the Fox and the Hound and met you and some of the other lovely people, the Grotto, and just good connection, nice vibe, felt accepted, felt like there were some cool people there that could do some stuff, and
and we
hung out and got along, and I'm like, hey, these people are pretty cool.
Yeah, and
And
that's
that's how it started.
that's it. That's I remember you all showing up at that Fox and Hound. It was a fun day, and I remember you and Mark sitting at the table and coming up and introducing myself and just talking. I think that was the day with the booger. I don't know if anybody was there. I think I had a booger for like. Yeah, they remember, and like I caught it later, so I always remember it as the booger day. But
that's great, like it.
But that was fun. We had a lot of fun at Fox and Hound. We tore that place up a few times, and you've been in rocking and rolling. You work with our protest team. You also take care of a lot of the charity stuff for the Grotto, right?
I'm big on community, charity, outreach, and again, I will say that is the one thing that I felt that I needed from the church that I couldn't get outside the church. So I really needed the community part without the God part. And like for the people that have them together, that's great, but it just wasn't in my heart to have them both at the same time. But we needed the space where the non-believers could go for that community support. And so that's kind of been my goal as I've gotten involved with the Grotto, is to give people that space.
So let's talk a little bit more in depth here. I totally forgot everything you just said.
Well, kind of before I went with Mark, I grew up out in the country. I'm very much bound to like nature. I find nature very relaxing. I spent most of my days in my childhood out in a creek, playing with frogs, catching crawdads, that kind of, pure goodness. So I've always just been bound to nature. I have been reading about other religions, other cultures. I'll explore anything. Read a lot of book about how witches are connected to nature. And I actually had a space in my basement with like a peaceful place that Mark actually had me set up just to put my good intentions into the world. And it just brought me a lot of peace. And then as I read the Satanic Bible, I started meeting members of the Grotto. I wasn't even for sure really that I didn't even know that there were a whole bunch of different kinds of Satanists or different paths. I just knew that it was something I wanted to be involved in. And it kind of developed for me as I learned more, because part of being part of the Grotto, you made us, you didn't made us, but you're like, if you want to be part of this group, you should be educated and you should read. And so we would read books and have discussions and then kind of figure out where we fell along that lines. And I really liked that. I liked that you challenged us to kind of read and figure out, are you more like LaVey? Are you more, like Crowley? Are you atheist? So I identify as an atheistic Satanist.
Right.
Which means I personally don't believe in God or Satan. And so people don't understand like how that makes me a Satanist if I don't believe in Satan. But again, I've had explained to me, we use Satan as the adversary because so many people in our culture are frightened by Satan. They're frightened by knowledge and education. And that's why he makes the perfect adversary. Because if you look at the story in the Bible, we really were tempted. God supposedly put the temptation out there, but Lucifer, the devil, is actually the one who brought knowledge to earth. So
these metaphors and these stories really speak to you. And
I've always loved Bible stories, and I love philosophy and short stories and fables. And I feel like, most stories have a message. But what would have happened if they believed that it truly exists, if we hadn't got that knowledge? Would we be sitting here naked, not know we're naked? So maybe that part of the story was really, he was the one bringing the light to the world, because knowledge and education are so important to me.
Right. And something that we're critically lacking in today's society.
Why would we not want to have knowledge and education? To me, that doesn't make any sense. So in that way, I think that's a great part of the story, is like maybe it should have been reversed. Maybe he was really the hero in that story and not the villain. And I, a lot of times, identify with the villain in stories a lot.
And that's,
so.
I mean, that's part of Satanism, right? Is flipping that story around and challenging those social norms.
Yeah. Provocative thought is what I'm all about. So.
Yeah, absolutely, you are.
Yeah.
That's okay. No, that's absolutely amazing. Is there any one moment that you feel like confirmed to yourself, like, oh, I'm a Satanist now? There are certain times in my life where I've done something or something's happened, and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure that puts me firmly in X
I am
category.
pretty sure I have always been a Satanist, as far as I've always felt the draw inside for activism, standing up for those that are weaker than me, that don't have their own voices. And I don't think it's ever been fed before. So I think it's always been there. I just didn't know what to call it, and I didn't know how to get there. Mm-hmm. But I've always been the one, like, I remember in like 6th or 7th grade, we'd have a test, and I was really smart in science. And my teacher was my volleyball coach. And if anyone got something wrong on the test, I would stand up, whether I got in trouble or not, and defend it until, like, I basically almost got kicked off the team. And my parents were like, well, don't you want to play volleyball? I'm like, yes, but that question was right on the test for this reason. And so I would always stand up, explain, yes, it was right, and here's why it's right. And then I challenge you to do something to me for saying it's right. So I've always been that person that's unafraid to stand up.
Really taking that adversary to heart.
So this kind of gave me the place, especially like when we started going to Planned Parenthood, to step out of my shell of this small town that I've grown up in and really come into who I am.
I'm glad you brought up Planned Parenthood too. You like I said before, you do a lot in this group. You've got your fingers in a lot of bowls around here. One of them that I think that you excel at and just nail every time is when we go out to counter protest at Planned Parenthood. You show up a lot. Your tactics, your ability to communicate with people, I always think is on point out there. Whenever I see that you're out there, I know the Grotto is getting represented well, and that you're going to shake somebody out there today. Whether they need to be shake to get scared or shake to get a slap of reality in them, you are equally capable of both. Tell me a little bit about your experience with us protesting and Planned Parenthood, what that means to you.
Well, I think it's really important because it's not, when you go out there, there's a lot of different people that you encounter on the sidewalk. There's a Christian group, there's different Catholic groups, there's just random citizens. So at first, when they talk to you, it seems like it's about religion. They want to make it about religion. And so I think religious freedom is important. So I would say, just cut me out of that right now because I respect your religion. I'm asking you to respect mine. The other thing I see out there is, they want to make it about abortion. Well, to me specifically, it's not necessarily about abortion because I believe it's about women. And it's about women deserving to get the health care that they need just like a man can. Absolutely. I don't think anyone would go to a man and say, hey, you can't get Viagra. You don't deserve to have sex. No one would in our society would try to dictate that. But because we're female, because we've grown up in these societies that tell us, we're not as important as men, our voices are not as important as men, we have to battle that. And this, to me, it's not about religion. It's not about abortion. It's about rights for women. It's about women getting health care that they deserve. And no one should have to be harassed while they're trying to get health care.
Absolutely.
But if anyone disagrees, please invite me to your doctor's appointment. I will be glad to come out and personally protest you so you know what it feels like.
Absolutely. That's 100%. And that's, I think it speaks to just autonomy. You don't get to push other people around. You don't get to make those decisions no matter who you are, right? And if you keep pushing that, and especially under the guise of being holy or sanctified by your God to do it, you're going to get resistance, and you're going to get it from us.
Right.
I think personally, like I said, I said this a little bit earlier. I think your tactics are amazing. I've seen you both get in people's face and be aggressive, and I've seen you pull it back and talk to people on such a personal level that I know that it breaks through there. Have you ever had like a particular moment while out at Planned Parenthood that really spoke to you above the rest? Something that you were involved in that made an impact on you?
I think every time you go out there, it impacts you in one way or another. It's very emotional. It's very exhausting. Like sometimes I'll just go home and just crash because it's so much emotion. But I think what affects me and the reason like I really out there is because I see these kids who are young, vibrant kids that have their whole lives in front of them being brainwashed by a church, and they don't know it, and they want praise so bad. They, and that's why last weekend I spent a lot of time talking to 3 of the younger guys because you're at a very impressionable age. You've not lived your life yet. Like you have so many experiences yet to have. And I remember being in their place when I was that age. I'm so impressionable and wanting to please and wanting to do right. And even sometimes when you think you're doing right, you're damaging yourself and you're taking on this trauma in yourself. And I don't want to see, I care about those kids out there.
Right.
And I wish the people they were out there with cared about them as much as I do.
Right, because they're being used by those people who are bringing them out there. Yeah.
So in some ways, even though we don't have the same opinions on stuff, and I understand why they don't, I try to mentor them. I try to let them know that, there is hope out there. It's not necessarily through the church. There are people like myself that, I'm deemed evil and a devil worshiper. You can come to me with anything and I'm going to help you. I'm probably going to be more willing to help you than these people over here who are really, really trying to use and damage you.
Who are holding up the signs saying they're going to help,
yes.
And they're not.
So when we're out there, like, I think a lot of it is you develop a relationship with these people, good, bad, or otherwise. And I do genuinely care about the people, and I do genuinely care about the community. A lot of times when we're out there, I talk to people that are walking in and out of the store. I'm like, hey, how are you doing today? The people at Dollar Tree know us. I spend a lot of time just getting out there because, not everyone is willing to come out of their shell and share who they are. But if you come across relatable and you're willing to meet people where they are and let them know that there's a place for them, that's very important. I don't want anyone, feeling alone and left out. Like we've had members of our group feeling that way. I don't want anyone committing suicide because they're isolated and the church is pushing them out. I want them to have a place to go.
And you've always kind of been that embodiment of empathy and compassion in this group. A lot of times I'll say I don't have the luxury to be empathy and compassionate because I got shit to do, and maybe that's a little unfair on my end. I do always appreciate the group members like yourself who are very much in tune with that. And when I'm even being a dick, you can go, hey, maybe you should look at this and not be such a dick about it. And you've affected me that way. Plenty of members have. And like I said, I truly do appreciate that attitude that comes with some of our group members like you who are.
Well, I think it's just, we're all unique and we all work together in different ways. So what you do, like I highly admire, and sometimes I pull the Michael out, I pull the Trent right out of me and it's on and I'm out for blood. But other times, I just pull myself back. Like if I feel that need is there. But my role wouldn't work as good without your role because we have to play, we have to play good guy, bad guy sometimes.
Absolutely. And we are. And like you said, we as we go out there and we interact with these people and we learn how our teammates interact with these people, and we can look out for each other and we can develop these skills with each other. We do start to play off each other, and these tactics become more evolved, more sophisticated. They take on levels that penetrate deeper than just any one person out there going, fuck you, asshole. We start to develop.
But that has its place. I will never, ever put you down for that because ultimately and people don't know if they're not leaving the house and they're not going on their own. They don't know, but you can only talk to these people for so long, and the words don't matter anymore. They're not hearing you. You're not hearing them. We're not going to convert each other. There is a time and a place for exactly your actions.
Absolutely, and that's it. We keep evolving, we keep evaluating, and we keep updating our tactics and our needs as it is. And that's one of the big deals with Project Fire and Brimstone this year, is that we're developing and we're raising these tactics so we can take the fight away from Planned Parenthood, which eventually always ends up at a stalemate. Like you said, at the end, you can be tired, you can go home and crashed out, whether you're on our side, on their side, indifferent side. You go home, you sleep, the next week you're back at it. And ultimately, it's kind of a stalemate. We might keep them from harassing patients, but by God, if they're not there again the next week. So with Project Fire and Brimstone, we're taking this fight away from there. We're not going to fight on their terms. We're going to take it to places where it will hurt them, where it will show the inhumanity of their actions to the rest of the world. And I can't wait to be involved with that with you this year.
Absolutely. We look forward to being involved in that. I put forth a call to action today. I'm going to be doing a talk pretty soon again with the Witches Circle about community activism, calls to action, and what all that means. We as a community have a responsibility to keep connecting and growing with other similar groups. We don't have to be exactly the same. But if we want to be proactive, if we want society to understand who we are and see that we can make a difference, we have to keep these projects going, and we have to keep pulling our connections into them.
And that's think about it this way too. And I've talked to some of our pagan friends about this. Could you imagine a coalition where atheists, pagans, Satanists, LBGT community members, any of these myriad groups that are out here and that are kind of out doing their own thing, if we all came together and just decided, hey, for this one thing, we're all going to agree. We're all going to decide to do this one thing. Do you know how powerful we would be?
Extremely powerful.
So powerful. We would make these Christians shake in their boots. AIM, the abortionist murder folks, 40 Days of Life, all these fanatical groups that are out there trying to take away autonomy, trying to take away rights, they would shit themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to see this year, right? With Fire and Brimstone, so we're going to keep, like you said, keep reaching out to people who have similar mindsets. We don't have to be the same thing. We don't have to agree on everything. If we can agree on a couple things and we can all unite behind that, we will dominate. We will take care of this. I
absolutely believe there is a powerful force out there. We just need people to figure out what their talents and skills are, get on board, reach out to someone, reach out to Michael, Travis, myself, Hermetica. There's so many people, and we try to make it so that there's always something going on that you can involve yourself in. I don't care if you're behind a keyboard. I don't care if you're behind a camera. I don't care if you're a computer hacker. We will find a place where you can be beneficial to this movement. And it is a movement. Society is turning away from churches. Churches are forcing people out, saying they're not welcome. Let's show them that we don't need them. We have our own societies where we can be proactive and effective and fight them.
Well, and that's these groups, I would even argue, that are a direct symptom of the church failing and dying. These
Absolutely.
Are the fanatical death throes of people who are losing their place, their power, and authority in this world, and are swinging for the fences and everything in their might to retain that power. And we're going to be the nail that puts the fucking lid on the coffin, right? We're going to drive it in there and make sure that this thing goes down.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan. Carrie, you're just so amazing. Thank you for being on here today. What else do you have going on? What do we have lined up that you're working on?
Okay, so we have the Casey Gauthan swap, which that's probably just going to be a yearly thing.
It's bi-yearly, isn't it? It's spring and fall.
Hermetica, yeah.
Yeah.
So at least 1 to 2 times a year. We enjoy raising money for the Grotto. So, and we have the best goth clothing. We have the best goth gear. We've got the best things in our houses. We remodel a lot. We keep the new stuff in. We have artisans in our group. We have crafters in our group. So it's going to be amazing. We have people making stuff, donating stuff. Just I can't wait to see how much money we're going to raise.
And that's all that money. And this is, once again, we talked about this a little bit with Hermetica, about how you guys just killed it last time we did this.
Yep.
And that money that we raise directly goes into the Grotto being able to do other things. It goes into us being able to purchase stuff for protesting, to be able to fund religious events that we want to do. Everything that we come together as a team, that stuff like the Goth Swap and Shop helps fund. So
we've got the Fire and Brimstone Project. We've got Satan's Cheerleaders. So if you are an extrovert and you like cute little goth clothes and you want to be in parades, you want to be at the Goth and Swap, you want to be at our events, Satan's Cheerleaders is fantastic. We have this cute little design. I've posted some pictures. We got to get some cheers developed because I'm very excited about that.
I've got a skirt in the mail.
Yep. We've got Pride coming up. Last year, we went to Pride and I was like, why don't we have a float? So we're going to have a float in Pride this year, people.
We're going to have a good float this year, too, right?
Like, we're going to have an amazing float.
We're not just going to be pulling a little red wagon down the road.
No, definitely not.
We're going to have a good float.
I'm sure we'll probably be passing stuff out, too. We've got button makers, we've got shirt makers, we've got media, we've got podcasts. Like, everyone is just throwing in and making this such an amazing organization. I can't wait to see what develops because it just keeps getting bigger. Each person has started kind of taking roles. We don't have labels here. We all help each other, but we're making things for the community. No one should ever be bored here. We've got Witches Circle. There's always something you can plug yourself into.
If you're bored, reach out to us. We got something for you to do.
If you're bored, we can find something. We need a good lawyer. Like, I'll put that out there. We need some good lawyers. What is your profession at work? Let us know. Message us.
And that's there is no expectation on this group, right? That's, as we grow, we're just allowing it to grow. However it grows, in whatever direction this community decides to take it, we're not putting any expectations on ourselves except for to do the best we can.
I got to interrupt you right there because, so you know how Christians say they're high on life and high on Jesus and all this. So a couple of weeks ago at a protest, like, I was really jacked up because it just makes my Saturday to go make these people miserable. And I was so jacked up. Like, so Valley, of course, asked me, how old are you? Yes, I'm 50, people. I'm 50. One of the older members of the group. But, like, I got a lot of energy, okay? So Valley didn't like that, apparently. Well, his friend Jared, also with AIM.
Jared, president and founder of AIM.
Because I had so much energy and I was so full of life, had the nerve to ask me if I was on drugs. And so he didn't understand where all this energy and all this excitement comes from. And I'm thinking, that's sad because you're a Christian. You're supposed to have this energy and life for Jesus.
They're always so
miserable.
But
I'm a Satanist and I have this energy because I'm coming to be your adversary. So
because we enjoy it.
Thank you, Jared. I don't need drugs. I just need you, baby.
And that's absolutely true. When we're there, we have, even the rough days, we have so much fun, right? We're smiling. And I think that breaks them down quicker than anything else. They know when we show up that we're having a good goddamn time fucking with them.
Absolutely.
And I think that breaks them down quicker than anything. And they're such sad sacks. And especially some of the veteran guys who have been out there and we've broken down over the last year.
Trey's not looking so good anymore. He's
Trey,
not
Cliff,
looking
both
hot.
of them, they're just looking sad and miserable and broken.
Cliff's looking a little psychotic.
Cheers my heart. Cheers my heart.
Hulking out, throwing his signs, you know.
He's looking homeless, just so y'all know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
and a little Star Wars-ish. Looked like he riding in on those things. What are they called? Gear. Come on, Star Wars people. What are they called?
Ewoks.
No, what they ride in on through the desert.
Bantha. It's the Bantha.
Okay, the Bantha.
Yeah, it's the Bantha.
Yeah.
I said it.
I'm saying, look at the picture, compare it to Star Wars.
He very much looks like he's riding in on a scene from Hoth when he's out there in the winter. And it's one of my personal pleasures in life to walk up to him and just go, fuck, you're an ugly Ewok. And just walk. I don't know why it tickles me so much, but it does.
He just looks so much like it. I can't.
I mean, he's got that like Timothy McVeigh kind of like guy in the woods kind
He
of
started getting that
wildness.
really wild-eyed
Yeah.
look, yes.
Yeah.
And I recognize it. And for those of you who don't know, I used to work at a HUD Section 8 tax credit property, and I've actually been threatened with death. And Cliffy is looking a lot like that in the eyes. Like, I had a guy come in the office one day and threaten to kill us all. And just so you know, Cliff, when he threatened that, I said, I'm 3 steps away. I'm going to get a lot of your DNA first. So be ready.
Well, that's what Dan Cummings had that joke where he said the guy is visibly mentally ill. You can just look at him and go, oh.
Yeah.
And
we've seen the change.
Yeah.
We have seen the change.
And that's what extremism does,
It may feel like
right?
we're not making a difference, but we have seen the changes throughout the year. We've been there for a whole year, and we have seen a lot of changes.
We've broken them down. That original crew that was there, maybe half a dozen middle-aged, white, cis Christian men who think that they have the right to tell everything, they've been busted up. Maybe 2 or 3 show up at a time now, and they're not enthusiastic. They're not happy about being there.
Not excited about their cheerleading cones anymore. No.
That is an effective change we've made. And that's when we first started this. I had people, even online, when I first started posting videos and we started talking about this, go, why are you going to do this? You're never going to change these people's mind. You're never going to make a difference. Just ignore them. And in my heart, I just felt like that was such a shit answer. I was like, that can't be
You know what? That's an adult answer. Like, I've heard that since childhood. Like, leave it alone. Don't make a scene. And people like ask me like, well, why do you have to call yourself a Satanist to go do it? You know, like, because that's attached to it. It's not good work. And just because you don't understand the work doesn't mean it's not good work. Mm-hmm. And anyone going out there that is provoking a thought in any kind of way, creating a distraction, protecting the women going into that building, we're doing your work. You know, I'm 50 years old and I'm tired of sitting on the couch on my butt and not doing anything to make a change. So what's your excuse? I mean, I was out there like 3 days after I had hip surgery. So I'm saying there are physical times, there are emotional things going on in this world, but when are we as a society going to stop sitting on our butts and start doing something to make changes that we need and want?
And on this local level, right, we're not pushing, and this is not to talk shit on TST, but we're not pushing off this onto somebody else. We're not giving money to somebody else and saying, go take care of this for us. Go do it. We're going into our community. We're fighting men in our community who are trying to fucking do these things, and we are stopping them. This is a ground level grassroots. And I think you may have even said it earlier today when we were at a Fire and Brimstone meeting, how we start off small and locally and it'll spiral outwards.
Absolutely.
The more we do, the bigger it'll get and it'll come out.
Share the videos. Add the TikToks. Like, these are small little things that you can do to expose these men. These men are sickening. I have spent a year with them, and, you know, at first I'm like, okay, give them a chance. They're sickening. They believe in the oppression of women, the oppression of society, and forcing their views upon society. They want laws made by their religious views. And I'm sorry, but we can't stand for that. We just can't.
And I just listened to a podcast from these men, and I'm not talking about some weird offset of somewhere else. No, these men that we see on, you know, weekend basis outside, podcasts of them talking about putting women in jail for murder, trying them for murder, for abortion.
I just read that on one of these laws they're trying to pass today.
These men? These men that we're talking about Stu MacArthur, ex-FBI deputy director. We're talking about Trey Jadlow out of Prairie Village and his dental.
Clifton Bogie
out of Bonner Springs with his messed up Acorn Academy. Jared, and I can't even say this, Jared is the ringleader behind all of
Valley
this.
Sharping.
Valley, and they're all out of Manhattan.
His wife.
Manhattan's where this all starts with
Max
Langston.
And you'll see some of them have been running for political offices. This is their idea of how they're going to make change. They're going to force their religion upon you by getting these laws, by getting into office and by getting these laws changed. So people, you need to start waking up and paying attention.
Especially to who's on those ballots, especially in your local community.
I'm going to be posting later to a link to some of the bills they're trying to get passed.
That's what the HB 2128 right now is, one that old Jared's trying to work on himself. And I mean, it's disgusting. And it's not even just abortion, right? They sneak all kinds of weird shit into these bills. And luckily, it's still shelved right now. They're getting ready to throw a rally so that they can force lawmakers. They're going to write lawmakers. They're going to harass lawmakers to pull this thing off the shelf and try to get it reinstituted.
And we can do the same thing because we've gathered all their information. So if we send the letters to the same people saying the opposite, we can let them know we don't support it.
Yeah, that's we need to start moving in this direction too. Like I said, especially moving away from just helping at Planned Parenthood, which I love, which I think is a good thing and that we should be invested in, but we have to go bigger than that. The battle's not going to be won there. It's going to be won in the Kansas Senate and the Kansas House of Representatives. It's going to be one talking to city council members. It's going to be one showing up at these guys' churches with their names on billboards saying, Trey Jadlow harasses fucking women. Why are you letting this predator in your church?
And you guys have to think, like, these churches, they're telling people how to vote. When these people go to church, they are very politically involved. They are telling their congregation how to vote, how they are expected to vote.
Mm-hmm. And they're not supposed to, but they definitely
do.
They definitely are. And we've got to take the same mentality here. Look, I don't want to tell anyone how to vote, but I will tell you, like, think about it. What are we doing? Are you avoiding a vote just because you think being political's messy and it's not going to change anything?
At least read what you're voting for or against.
Yeah, at least get involved
educate
a
yourself.
little bit.
Yeah.
Especially on these lower levels. People think voting once a year for the president is doing something. And I've been guilty of that. But we do. We need to get much more involved. We need to get much more people involved. And we really need to start hammering these guys on all fronts.
Absolutely.
Well, Miss Carrie, I think this was a very productive conversation. You are a fireball as always, and I love having you around.
Thank you. I love being here, Michael, and we're glad to do anything we can for the Grotto.
All right. Well, that's it for another episode of the Grotto Show. Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
And cut.
Thanks for joining us today. We do have stickers now, and we want to do a sticker campaign. So you take this sticker, you go put it on something. We're not telling you to vandalize anything or anything like that, and we're not responsible for it if you do. But you tag us in it. Let us know where you put it. The one that gets the most likes, reactions, positive or negative, we really don't care. We're going to do a little vote and a contest, and we'll give that person a special something. We haven't decided exactly what it is, but it'll be worth it. We like to do custom things for certain people for accomplishments, things like that. So thanks for joining us. Don't forget, like, subscribe, all the other good stuff. Hail Satan.